Pomerania during the High Middle Ages covers the history of Pomerania in the 12th and 13th centuries. The early 12th century Obodrite, Polish, Saxon, and Danish conquests resulted in vassalage and Christianization of the formerly pagan and independent Pomeranian tribes. Local dynasties ruled the Principality of Rügen, the Duchy of Pomerania, the lands of Schlawe and Stolp, and the duchies in Pomerelia. The Dukes of Pomerania expanded the realm into Circipania and Uckermark to the southwest, and competed with the Kingdom of Poland and the Margraviate of Brandenburg for territory and formal overlordship over the duchies. Pomerania Demin lost most of its territory and was integrated into Pomerania Stettin in the mid-13th century. When the Obodrites died out in 1223, competition arose for the lands of Schlawe and Stolp, which changed hands numerous times. Starting in the High Middle Ages, a large influx of German settlers and the introduction of German law, custom, and Low German language began the process of Germanization. Many of the people groups that had dominated the area during the early Middle Ages, such as the Slavic Rani, Lutetian, and Pomeranian tribes, were assimilated into the new German Pomeranian culture. The Germanization was not complete, as the Kashubians, descendants of Slavic Pomeranians, dominated many rural areas in Pomerelia. The arrival of German colonists and Germanization mostly affected both the central and local administration. The conversion of Pomerania to Christianity was achieved primarily by the missionary efforts of Absalon and Otto von Bamberg, by the foundation of numerous monasteries, and through the Christian clergy and settlers. A Pomeranian diocese was set up in Wohlen. The see was later moved to Kamen, Obodrite realm. After the decline of the Lutetian Federation and the subsequent expansion of the Obodrite realm into former Lutetian areas, and following the victory of Obodrite Prince Henry in the Battle of Schlawe in 1093, Helmold of Bossor reported that among others the Lutetians, Pomeranians and Rani had to pay tribute to Obodrite Prince Henry. The Rani, however, launched a naval expedition in 1100, in the course of which they sieged Lubica, a predecessor of modern Lubeck and then the Obodrite capital. This attack was however repulsed, and the Rani became tributary again. After they had killed Henry's son Waldemar and stopped paying tribute, Henry retaliated with two expeditions launched in the winters of 1123-24 and 1124-25, supported by Wendish and Saxon troops. The Rani Svantovit priests were forced to negotiate, and the island was spared only in return for an immense sum which had to be collected from the continental Slavs further east. At this time, Władysław I, Duke of Pomerania, was already expanding his realm into Lutetian territories south of the Rani. Regrouping after Henry's death, the Rani again assaulted and this time destroyed Lubica in 1128, ending Obodrite influence in the Pomeranian territories. As part of Polish realm, in several expeditions mounted between 1102 and 1121, most of Pomerania had been acquired by the Polish Duke Boleslaw III Rema. From 1102 to 1109, Boleslaw campaigned in the Notek and Paseta area. The Pomeranian residence in Białogard was taken already in 1102. From 1112 to 1116, Boleslaw took all of Pomerelia. From 1119 to 1122, the area towards the Oder was acquired. Szczecin was taken in the winter of 1121-1122. The conquest resulted in a high death toll and devastation of vast areas of Pomerania, and the Pomeranian dukes became vassals of Boleslaw III of Poland. Deportations of Pomeranians to Poland took place. The terms of surrender after the Polish conquest were that Władysław had to accept Polish sovereignty, convert his people to Christianity, and pay an annual tribute to the Polish duke. The Annals of Traska report that Boleslaw III crossed the sea and captured castles. The currently prevailing view is that this mention refers to a campaign in Pomerania, but proposed targets also include the Levant, Denmark and Åland. In Pomerania, Boleslaw's targets may have been Rügen, Rugia, Wohlen, Wallenstetten, Szczecin. Conversion of Pomerania. The first attempt to convert the Pomeranians to Christianity following the acquisition of Pomerania by Boleslaw III of Poland was made in 1122. The Spanish monk Bernard traveled to Germany, accompanied only by his chaplain and an interpreter. The Pomeranians, however, were not impressed by his missionary efforts and finally threw him out of town. Bernard was later made Bishop of Lebus. After Bernard's misfortune, Boleslaw III asked Otto of Bamberg to convert Pomerania to Christianity, which he accomplished in his first visit in 1124/25. Otto's strategy severely differed from the one Bernard used. While Bernard traveled alone and as a poor and unknown priest, Otto, a wealthy and famous man, was accompanied by 20 clergy of his own diocese, numerous servants, 60 warriors supplied to him by Boleslaw, and carried with him numerous supplies and gifts. After arriving in Piritz, the Pomeranians were assured that Otto's aim was not the gain of wealth at the expense of the Pomeranian people, as he was wealthy already, but only to convert them to Christianity, which would protect the Pomeranians from further punishment by God, as which the devastating Polish conquest was depicted. This approach turned out to be successful, and was backed by parts of the Pomeranian nobility that in part was Christian-raised already, like Duke Władysław, who were encouraged and promoted Otto's mission. Many Pomeranians were baptized already in Piritz and also in the other burgs visited. At this first mission, Otto founded at least 11 churches, 2 of those each in Szczecin and Wohlen. Otto of Bamberg returned in 1128, this time invited by Duke Władysław himself, aided by the Emperor Holy Roman Emperor Lothair III, to convert the Slavs of Western Pomerania just incorporated into the Pomeranian Duchy, and to strengthen the Christian faith of the inhabitants of Szczecin and Wohlen, who fell back into heathen practices and idolatry. Otto this time visited primarily Western Pomeranian burgs, had the temples of Gützkow and Wolgast torn down and on the sites erected the predecessors of today's St. Nikolai and St. Petri churches, respectively, before turning to Kamień Pomorski, Wohlen and Szczecin. The nobility assembled to a congress in Usedom, where they accepted Christianity on June 10, 1128. Otto then was titled Apostolos Gentis Pomeranorum, made a saint by Pope Clement III in 1189, and was worshipped in Pomerania even after the Protestant Reformation. Holy Roman Emperor Lothair claimed the areas west of the Oder for his empire. Thus the terms of Otto's second mission were not negotiated with Boleslaw III of Poland, but with Lothar and Władysław. However, Lothair terminated the mission in the fall of 1128, probably because he distrusted Otto's contacts with Boleslaw. Otto visited Gniezno on his way back to Bamberg. Adalbert of Pomerania, the later Pomeranian bishop, participated in Otto's mission as an interpreter and assistant. Fate of the pagan priesthood. The priests of the numerous gods worshipped before the conversion were one of the most powerful class in the early medieval society. The reaction to the Christianization of Pomerania was ambiguous. In 1122, they saved missionary Bernhard's life by declaring him insane, otherwise he would have been killed in Wohlen. On the other hand, Otto of Bamberg's mission was a far larger threat to the established pagan tradition, and eventually it succeeded in Christianization of the region. There are reports of unsuccessful assassination attempts made against Otto of Bamberg by the pagan priesthood. Following Otto's success, some of the pagan priests were crucified, while it is unknown what happened to the others. It has been speculated that they adapted to the new reality. Pomeranian diocese on Otto of Bamberg's behalf. A diocese was founded with the see in Wohlen, a major Slavic and Viking town in the Oder estuary. On October 14, 1140, Adalbert of Pomerania was made the first bishop by Pope Innocent II. Otto, however, had died the year before. There was a rivalry between Otto's Diocese of Bamberg, the Diocese of Magdeburg, and the Diocese of Gniezno for the incorporation of Pomerania. Pope Innocent II solved the dispute by repelling the claims and placed the new diocese directly under his Holy See. The see of the diocese was the Church of St. Adalbert in Wohlen. The diocese had no clear-cut borders in the beginning, but roughly reached from the Tribsesborough in the west to the Liebe River in the east. In the south it comprised the northern parts of Uckermark and Neumark. As such, it was shaped after the territory held by Ratibor I, Duke of Pomerania. After ongoing Danish raids, Wohlen was destroyed, and the see of the diocese was shifted across the Diewe to Kameen-Pomorsche's St. John's Church in 1176. This was confirmed by the Pope in 1186. In the early 13th century, the Kameen diocese along with the Pomeranian dukes gained control over Circipania. Also, the bishops managed to gain direct control over a territory around Kolobrzeg and Kozalin. The Pomeranian areas were integrated into the Kujavian diocese of W-Local. After the successful conversion of the nobility, monasteries were set up on vast areas granted by local dukes both to further implement Christian faith and to develop the land. The monasteries actively took part in the Aussiedlung. Most of the clergy originated in Germany, some in Poland, and since the mid-12th century also from Denmark. Wendish Crusade in 1147. The Wendish Crusade, a campaign of the Northern Crusades, was mounted by bishops and nobles of the Holy Roman Empire and Poland. The Crusaders ravaged the land and laid siege to Demmin and Stettin despite them being already Christian. Wohlen's Bishop Adalbert took part in the negotiations that finally led to the lifting of the Stettin siege by the Crusaders. Ratibor I, Duke of Pomerania, went to the imperial diet in Havelberg the following year, where he swore to be a Christian. Partition of 1155. Pomerania Demmin and Pomerania Stettin. Waterslaw died between 1134 and 1148. His brother Ratibor I, Duke in the lands of Schlawe and Stolp, ruled in place of Waterslaw's sons, Bogislaw I and Casimir I until his death in about 1155. Then the duchy was split into Pomerania Demmin, ruled by Casimir, including the Upper Peine, Tolenz, Divan and Riga areas, and Pomerania Stettin, ruled by Bogislaw, including the Lower Peine, Uecker, Oder, and Ihna areas. The Kolberg area was ruled in common as a codominion. westward expansion of Wartislaw. In the meantime, Wartislaw managed to conquer territories west of the Oder River, an area inhabited by Lutetia tribes weakened by past warfare, and included these territories into his Duchy of Pomerania. Already in 1120, he had expanded west into the areas near the Oder Lagoon and Peene River, most notably Demmin. The Principality of Gützkow and Wolgast were conquered in the following years. The major stage of the westward expansion into Lutetia territory occurred between Otto of Bamberg's two missions, 1124 and 1128. In 1128, Demmin, the county of Gützkow and Wolgast were already incorporated into Wartislaw's realm, yet warfare was still going on. Captured Lutetia and other war loot, including livestock, money, and clothes, were apportioned among the victorious. After Wartislaw's Lutetian conquests, his duchy lay between the Bay of Greifswald to the north, Circipania, including Güstrow, to the west, Kolberg, Kolobrzeg in the east, and possibly as far as the Havel and Spree rivers in the south. After the conquests, Wartislaw's realm stretched from the Bay of Greifswald in the north and Circipania with Güstrow in the west to the Havel and possibly also the Spree rivers in the south and the Kolobrzeg area in the east. These gains were not subject to Polish overlordship, but were placed under overlordship of Nordmark Margrave Albert the Bear, who according to Bialecki was a dedicated enemy of Slavs by Lothar III, Holy Roman Emperor. Thus, the Western territories contributed to making Wartislaw significantly independent from the Polish dukes. Wartislaw was not the only one campaigning in these areas. The Polish Duke Boleslaw III, during his Pomeranian campaign, launched an expedition into the Muritz area in 1121, before he turned back to subdue Wartislaw. The later Holy Roman Emperor Lothar III in 1114 initiated large-scale campaigns against the local Lutetia tribes, resulting in the final defeat in 1228. Also, the territories were invaded by Danish forces multiple times who, coming from the Baltic Sea, used the rivers Peene and Ucker to advance to a line Demmin Pass walk. At different times, Pomeranians, Saxons and Danes were either allies or opponents. The Pomeranian dukes consolidated the power in the course of the 12th century, yet the preceding warfare had left these territories completely devastated. Society under Wartislaw. During Wartislaw's rule, society was composed of the Pomeranian freemen and the slaves, who consisted mostly of Wendish, German and Danish war captives. The freemen generally made their living from agriculture, fishing and husbandry, as well as hunting and trade. The social status depended both on accumulated wealth as well as noble status. The proportion of slaves in the total population of the area was relatively small, and in fact the Pomeranians exported slaves to Poland. The largest settlements were Wallen and Stettin, each of which had a few thousand inhabitants, and a bi-weekly market day. While some historians address these settlements as towns, this is rejected by others due to the differences to later towns. They are usually referred to as early towns, proto-towns, castle towns, or emporia. The Slavic designation was *grod. The population of Pomerania was relatively wealthy in comparison to her neighbors, owing to abundant land, interregional trade and piracy. Wartislaw's power and standing differed depending on the area. In the east of his duchy his power was strongest. Tribal assemblies are not documented. In the center, Wartislaw had to yield the decisions of the local population and nobility. In the towns, Wartislaw maintained small courts. Every decision of Wartislaw had to pass an assembly of the elders and an assembly of the free. In the newly gained Lutetia territories of the west, Wartislaw managed to establish a rule that resembled his rule in the eastern parts, but also negotiated with the nobility. Pomeranian expeditions to Scandinavia. In 1134, Pomeranian troops invaded Denmark and even looted Roskilde, then the Danish capital. In 1135, Norwegian Kongel was attacked and sacked. Saxon conquest. In the west, bishops and dukes of the Holy Roman Empire mounted expeditions to Pomerania, most notable for the further fate of Pomerania are the 1147 Wendish Crusade and the 1164 Battle of Rügen. The Pomeranian dukes became vassals of Henry the Lion of Saxony. Circipania came under control of the Pomeranian dukes at about this time. Despite this vassalage, Henry again sieged Emmen in 1177 when he allied with the Danes, but reconciled with the Pomeranian dukes thereafter. Holy Roman Empire. After the 1147 Wendish Crusade and the 1164 Battle of Rügen, the duchy had joined Henry the Lion's Duchy of Saxony. Following internal struggles, Henry fell against Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa in 1181. Boguslaw I took his duchy as a fief directly from Barbarossa in the same year. At the time, the duchy was also referred to as Slovenia. The duchy remained in the empire, although Denmark managed to take control of the southern Baltic, including the Duchy of Pomerania from the 1180s until the 1227 Battle of Bornholm. Danish conquests. For the north, Denmark attacked Pomerania. Several campaigns throughout the 12th century culminated in the defeat of the Principality of Rügen in 1168. Conquest and conversion of the Rügen Principality. The island of Rügen and the surrounding areas between the Recknance, Peen and Reich rivers were the settlement area of the West Slavic Rani tribe. After Otto von Bamberg's mission, only the Rani Principality of Rügen remained pagan. This was changed by a Danish expedition of 1168, launched by Valdemar I of Denmark and Absalon, Archbishop of Roskilde. The Danish success in this expedition ended a series of conflicts between Denmark and Rügen. The Rügen princes, starting with Jeremiah, became vassals of Denmark, and the Principality would be Denmark's bridgehead on the southern shore of the Baltic for the next centuries. The 1168 expedition was decided when, after a Danish siege of the borough of Arkona, a fire broke out, leaving the defendants unable to further withstand the siege. Since Arkona was the major temple of the superior god Swantwit and therefore crucial for the powerful clerics, the Rani surrendered their other strongholds and temples without further fighting. Absalon had the Rani hand out and burn the wooden statues of the gods and integrated Rügen in the diocese of Roskilde. The mainland of the Rügen Principality was integrated into the diocese of Schwerin. Danish conquest of all Pomerania. When the Rügen princes became vassals of Valdemar I of Denmark in 1168, the Saxon-Danish alliance broke apart. In the fall of 1170, the Danes raided the Oder estuary. In 1171, the Danes raided Circipania and took Koshamarsborough in Baron-Lubgen. In 1173, the Danes turned to the Oder lagoon again, taking the borough of Stettin. Waterslaw II Swantibor Castellan of Stettin became a Danish vassal. In 1177, the Danes again raided the Oder lagoon area, also the borough of Woolgast in 1178. In 1184, Boguslaw I led the Pomeranian navy towards Rügen. On Emperor Barbarossa's initiative, Boguslaw was to take the Principality of Rügen from the Danes, whose king Canute VI had refused him the oath of fealty. Though superior in numbers, the Pomeranian navy was utterly defeated by the Danish navy led by Absalon near Coos Island in the Bay of Griswold. In 1184 and 1185. 3 campaigns of the Danes resulted in making Boguslaw I, Duke of Pomerania, a Danish vassal. These campaigns were mounted by Valdemar's son and successor for the Danish throne, Canute VI of Denmark. In the Duchy of Pomerania, the Danish period lasted until Valdemar II of Denmark lost the Battle of Bornehöved on the 22nd of July 1227. Danish supremacy prevailed until 1325 in the Rügen Principality. During this time, the emperor formally renounced his claims on the southern Baltic Sea in favor of Denmark. Society in the late 12th and early 13th centuries. While in the early 12th century most of the Pomeranians were free, by the late 12th century only the nobility and knights remained free. They were free in the decisions concerning the property and actions, though formally they had to apply for the duke's support. The class of the unfree still consisted of prisoners of war, but additionally one became unfree after conviction of a major criminal offense or if one was unable to pay one's debts. The unfree made up for an estimated 15% of the population and primarily had to work on the lands of the free. Most of the population of this time was largely dependent on the duke. This dependency could also result in becoming dependent on a person other than the duke. If the duke granted parts of his lands, including the population thereon, to a noble, a church, or a monastery, this class shared certain obligations and restrictions with the unfree, for example a head tax, and a restricted right to marry. The major obligations were participation in the duke's military campaigns, defense of the duchy, erection and maintenance of the ducal buildings, to hand over horses, oxen, and carriages to the duke or his officials on demand, to host and to cater the duke or his officials on demand, to supply rations for the duke's journeys, a periodic tribute in form of a fixed amount of meat and wheat, and also a church tax.